Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear us in the back? Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come meet with us. I'd first like to kick us off here with Steve Hines, who's going to say a few words with me.
Thank you. I'm just going to open it for a person prayer, what we'd like to do. I'm with Westland First Baptist Church, and just hope that we can all have a good mind this evening and listen to get all the facts straight and go from there, okay? If you will, bow your head, please. Father, we thank you, God, for this day that you allow us all to be in your presence. We ask, God, that you bring forth, Lord, the words that we need to hear tonight to help us, Lord, to discuss things in a timely manner and in a peaceful manner. Father, we ask that you look down upon us. We ask, God, for your wisdom, for the courage, Lord, to do the things that you would have us to do in your will. We ask, God, that you just walk with us, talk to us, let us be the witness you would have us to be. Forgive us, God, for the times that we fail you, and we'll always look to thee in praise and for glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, we are here from 6 to 8, and also looking forward to spending all that time answering all the questions, and can stay later as well if there are more questions. This is our team from TeraWulf. We'll introduce ourselves up here at the front, and we have some other team members as well. And we are here to talk about the Muskie Data Campus, and really appreciate you coming out to learn about it. Don't know if the TV might be a little small for everyone to see, so I have a presentation, but we'll talk through it. Today's topics of discussion. We wanted to talk about who is TeraWulf. This is a new entity coming to your area, and I want to introduce ourselves and who the company is and what we do. We want to talk about the project, the Muskie Data Campus, share as much detail as we have, and answer questions about it. And then talk about some of the really important topics related to the project. Tax revenue and community benefits, jobs and workforce. We want to get into some of the really important topics that have come up in the last few weeks: electricity and ratepayer protections, water usage, noise impacts, and anything else that may come up, and save plenty of time for Q&A. And this is the team that's here today from TeraWulf. My name is Pace Rowley. I am the VP of Project Development. I'll likely be the face you might see around town as we're getting this project off the ground. And I come from an energy infrastructure background. Used to work for utility, built renewables, built ship terminals and ships, and various complex things in energy. Joined TeraWulf last year, and I'm in town from Wyoming.
Hello everybody, James Kasurgis. I'm the Senior Vice President of Corporate Business Development. So I spend a lot of my time with news sites and our customers. I started my career in the U.S. Navy. I'm the number 2 in a family of 7, grew up outside of Philadelphia. I served for 5 years on the USS Michigan, 3 deployments in the Western Pacific. From there, I moved into the world of finance. I worked for a couple hedge funds, and then from there found my way over to TeraWulf. I've been with the company for several years now. Very excited to be here. Thank you all for coming, for listening, and for asking questions. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Enright. I'm also one of 7 children, none of which went to the Naval Academy. James forgets to tell you that I think I'm 5. 4 of his brothers also went to the Naval Academy. None of my brothers and sisters went to the Naval Academy, just to put that out front right now. But I'm very proud of it nonetheless. I'm a Senior Vice President at TeraWulf. I've been with the company 17 years, and before that, I spent about 20 years in state and local government in my home state of Maryland. And then the company is headquartered in Maryland, and I found at some point in my previous life in government, I met some of the senior people who are still at TeraWulf. We have a lot of senior people that have been with the company for a very long time, but I met them because they were doing interesting things in the energy field, but they were also very much involved in community activities in the eastern shore of Maryland and in the state of Maryland, which is not always typical of companies. So I came to know the CEO and some of the senior people, and a few years later I decided this was something that I was interested in and joined the team. And I also just wanted to say that I think we all up here appreciate that on a beautiful June night, there's probably a lot of other things people would rather do, but this is an important issue for your community, and I think we recognize that, and we appreciate that you're taking the time to come out when I'm sure there's other things you would like to do. So nice to meet you all, and we'll be around afterwards as well to introduce ourselves personally.
Hello everyone, my name is Katie Doyle. I'm the head of recruitment, development, and engagement at TeraWulf. I'm new to the team this year. So my role involves building our team and also being involved in these events and meeting individuals like yourselves, reaching out to the community, and we're all looking forward to answering your questions, providing some more information tonight, and anything else we can help in this process. I am the third of 6 kids, one of which was in the Navy, not the Naval Academy. I'm the only girl. And I'm very excited to be involved in this work and happy to see some familiar faces after meeting some of you yesterday at our career event. So look forward to continuing the conversation and get started.
I'll just start by giving a bit of a history of who TeraWulf is. Well, like Mike mentioned, this team's been working together, the same team, for the past several decades. So TeraWulf as a company was founded in 2021, is when we went public. But before then, the team, sorry? Of course. Is this better? So before, as I was saying, before TeraWulf was founded, the team was in the power business. So the team built, owned, operated over 5 gigawatts of power plants, and that was a global business. We got into the business initially in 2021 of Bitcoin mining. We initially, we were in the business of generating electricity. We generate for X, we sell it for X plus Y, and that's how we made profit. In 2021, we got into Bitcoin mining. A couple of years later, with the rise of OpenAI and some of these other applications, there became a much larger need for infrastructure to support data center activity. So we shifted our focus, and today we're exclusively focused on serving these data center loads. So where are we today? As Mike mentioned, we're headquartered in Eastern Maryland. We've got an office in New York City, that's where I sit. We've got 2 sites in upstate New York. One of our sites is called Lake Mariner Data. It's currently the largest construction project in the state. We've got over 1,000 contractors on that site. We're up there building out a campus for a company called FloatStack and Google, who I'm sure you all know. We've also got another project in the western part of the state, west of Hawesville. Sorry, excuse me? I apologize. I'll try to be more clear. Is this better? It's the PA system. The PA system. 1 second. Test. Is this any better? No? Yeah. All right, I'm going to try to continue. I'll try and project a bit more. Is this any better? Maybe? Maybe just went out a little bit. I'll try this. Is this any better? Okay, thank you. Apologize about that. Thanks for letting me know. Still no? an echo. Okay, we're going to have to speak very slowly tonight. Okay. Well, I'll take a quick rewind. Today, we've got a couple locations in upstate New York. Our Lake Mariner data site currently is the largest construction project in the state. The next most is Buffalo Bills Stadium, actually. So we hire over 1,000 contractors today at that site. We've got over 100 full-time employees at that site. And then we recently entered the state of Kentucky. Our first project in the state of Kentucky was over in Hawesville. That was the former aluminum smelter by Century Aluminum. So in that project, we had a site that used to be the largest aluminum smelter in the country. In the aluminum business, they're very cost of power sensitive, so when the cost of power went up, that business was no longer profitable for them. Had to bring those operations down. So we came into the site and we saw an attractive opportunity to come in on an industrial site. We leveraged that existing infrastructure, which had already been put in place from the smelter, and find a new purpose for it. So we acquired that site several months ago. We've guided, we're a public company, and we've guided the market that we're going to announce who the end user for that project will be. But you'll see construction commence on that project this year. And so one thing, as you're asking all of these questions throughout the night, and you should, we encourage you to, one thing that I would ask you to do is go look at that project. That project is going to be about 1 year ahead. You should ask your friends, anybody who's over there, see what they're hearing, see what they're seeing, ask them what they're thinking. And I would ask you to really judge us about how we are as a company based on what we're doing over there. I like to think we're doing a pretty good job, but don't take it from me. You should go ask them. We like to come in, we like to be good partners to communities. We want to be good partners because it's good business. We want to come to a place, make sure that we're doing right by our community, by our neighbors, because then we want to grow. Because if we're able to grow, whether it be here or in another part of the state, that's good for us. So that's what we do. We build data centers. So our goal in the ecosystem of data centers is to contract the power, identify the land, design the data center, and then we build it for a customer, as an example, somebody like Google. We will then lease that data center to them, typically on a 15-plus year initial basis. So when we bring that data, can you guys still hear? That data center will come with an initial term from that customer of 15 years. Typically what happens though is those customers stay, so there are multiple 5-year renewals after that initial term. So that's what we do. We're very excited to be here. Maybe I'll pass it off. We'll continue with the presentation.
Yeah, James, I was thinking we could talk a little bit about what a data center actually is, just as a building envelope,
Sure.
What's inside.
Yeah. So, sorry? So what is a data center? So what is it that we're actually building? So what we will build is we're going to build a substation that allows us to connect to the electrical grid. Our responsibility is to deliver the power, the cooling, the security, and to maintain the data center. So we're going to build the connection, the power connections from the grid. We're going to put down a large cement pad. We're going to put up the steel. And then internal to the data center, there's going to be a closed-loop water cooling system. I know that's a topic that some of you may have some questions about, and we'll get into that. But there will be a water distribution system which distributes the water to the compute racks. Where our responsibility ends is at the rack. So you have, this large building. We've got power to the building. We are delivering the power within the building to the actual compute racks. We're also delivering the cooling to the compute racks, and then we've got a team that provides security for that building. Our responsibility And at the back, that's where our customer comes in. Somebody like a Google, an Amazon, a Microsoft, they will then bring all of the computing infrastructure. And the computing infrastructure is what's running things like your phones, your laptops, a number of applications, and I think we'll get into that in another slide.
This is our first one that James mentioned, which is up in New York. And just to give you an aerial view of what's inside, this is very similar. Very similar to one, will look a lot like the one we're planning for Project Muskie. Very large warehouse and cooling fans on top, electrical equipment around. So this is our first one that we're building up in New York. So the Muskie Data Campus project is based on the power that we are working with Kentucky Power to receive, and it's 1,000 megawatts brought into East Park Industrial Park. And I think many of you know the history of the site. Originally a strip mine for coal, and there was the planned Brady aluminum project, which I know was a loss when it didn't materialize. Our plans are to reuse that exact same site where Brady was going to, they had designed their building. And the buildings, I'll show you the site layout in a second, but it's going to be pretty much at the same location that Brady aluminum site is going to be. Using very modern design and it's the cleanest infrastructure we can use. There will be a building with, unlike an aluminum facility, no fumes, no chemicals, no greenhouse gas emissions coming from our building. It's two phases. One is the first 500 megawatts, and then the second 500 megawatts, and I'll talk about the timing of those two. And we will be employing the local workforce to help us build these buildings and maintain these buildings. Katie will get into the jobs section. We really want to spend some time on that. This is, if anyone's familiar with the East Park Industrial Park, the property is really just down the road from the ACTC, Ashland Community Technical College, and this is about where these three buildings are, is where the Brady aluminum site was planned for. Actually just on top of the border between Boyd and Greenup counties. And there's two buildings for each phase. So 500 megawatts, two buildings, and then the second 500 megawatts is another two buildings. Starting here with our switch yard, this is where Kentucky Power will bring their power, and then we'll be powering these first two, and then this is the third and the fourth down here. Sorry for the noise. Probably more detail than anyone is looking for, but I'm a project development guy, so I like to talk about the details. We've got the phases laid out here. Essentially what this, you can't see it because it's too small on this TV. Essentially what it is our phases for building phase 1 to be operational in 2028. How's this? Apologies for the gym acoustics, although we really appreciate it.
Okay, do you want to try this one?
We have a school employee working on the sound now. He's trying to do his best to fix it. The acoustics aren't great. Okay, try to make some improvements.
So where I was going with that now? All right. Working through it. So phase one, we will be building 2 buildings that will be operational by Q3 of 2028 is our plan. That's when we get first power, and that's when so we'll have about 2 years of construction jobs, and then after the construction is complete, we'll have a long-term lease, 15 to 20 years with our tenant, and then the operations are expected to go much longer than that first lease. That's just the first lease. And that first phase will house the permanent jobs to maintain that facility. The second phase is 2 more buildings, and we plan to have those up and running by 2030. For one, and then there's this, I wanted to point out the project that James alluded to. This was the other project that's sort of just ahead of this one, which is in Kentucky. In Hancock County, about an hour and a half west of Louisville. It's a Century aluminum smelter that was retired in 2022. We've done this, this company has worked with a lot of brownfield projects, retired industrial facilities, and converting them to new projects. This is an aluminum smelter, and after we are done with demolition and construction of the new buildings, it'll look like so. Not too dissimilar from what's there, and using the same amount of power that's currently at that facility. This one is just ahead, if you flip again. Again, too small for you all to see, and happy to make these slides available so that you actually can see them on your own. We'll make them available to you. This is the 2 projects related to each other in terms of timing. Justified is the one in Hancock County. That'll be operational in 2027, just about a year ahead of Muscat. So I want to talk about the project benefits with Mike.
I'll do my best. So as you can imagine, with an investment of this size, there are significant community benefits coming down the road. And I think sometimes what's lost in these conversations about data centers is the enormous investment these AI and HPC developments entail. So we plan to invest $3.5 to $4 billion over the next 2 to 3 years to construct these facilities. That does not take into account the tenant that would come in after that, which is another significant revenue influx for local communities. We've done some calculations. We're happy to share them with you, and we're also very much sharing them with the local counties and their PVAs and their financial folks to kick the tires and determine if these are accurate numbers, which I think all of us have now come to agree. So you'll see that there's a $1.5 billion estimated state and local tax revenue over the 15 years that we present this as we factor in the life of this project. Phase 1 would create 80 to 100 high-paying jobs. I would also like to make clear that we've been having really substantive and, how do I say this? People that speak the same language with the Tri-State Building Trades and John Holbrook. We have done work with unions before in other projects. We have no fears of unions like some businesses do. And in fact, from what I have gathered so far in our conversations with the building trades and others around the building trades, this is a very, very skilled workforce you have here in Eastern Kentucky, which is another reason. Which is another reason why we were eager to make this investment. Because you look at local community, you look at the workforce, you look at the school system, all of those things factor into an investment decision. But I have to tell you, on the skilled trades, it's an enormous factor in our company's decision to move forward here. There'll be hundreds and hundreds of high-quality local jobs in the construction part of this. We've mentioned the Lake Mariner data facility in upstate New York. Last I checked, there were 1,600 contractors working at that site. I would say 90–95% of them were union. We've emptied just about every hall in upstate New York. So another indication of kind of the workforce around these projects. I also wanted to mention, I don't know if Dr. Ferguson from ACTC is here, but something else that we're very committed to is working with community colleges as part of, it's good business for us because the employees that are developed out of the community colleges often come to work for us, but it also just makes good sense to teach people about this business because it's a business that's going to be around for some time. And I can't tell you how open and forthcoming Dr. Ferguson, Dr. Quarles, and the system have been in working with on this on us. I hope at some point in the future we can talk about a real partnership, something that we all agree on. But we have that experience in our past with community colleges. One of my first projects with this company was developing one with Hagerstown Community College in Western Maryland, a very rural part of the state, and it went very, very well. And then also, you know, we're not isolated. I was talking to a friend of mine who's very involved in local educational issues, and I explained to her that when we come into a community, we have a charitable trust, the TeraWulf Charitable Trust, but we're very committed to kind of working with the local judge executives and community leaders to kind of figure out how can we make the best bang for the buck with a nonprofit or a charitable contribution. So you'll hear more about that in the future, but I think you will see we put our money where our mouth is when it comes to that. We've actually set up a trust that we fund to do these kinds of things. So just a quick overview of some of the benefits of the project.
Yeah, we just closed this a few weeks ago, so we've been doing some quick work because I think it's been of interest as to what the estimated tax revenues would be on the project, and it really stems from that investment that Mike alluded to, $3.5 to $4 billion. I'll just highlight that the numbers that Mike was just talking about, just for phase 1. So you can expect that to double for phase 2. And so when I talk about the tax revenue, I'm also just talking about phase 1. Because that's what we've committed to in terms of an electric service agreement, Kentucky Power. We still have yet to do the second phase of that, and then we can talk about those revenues. But you could expect this to double. These are too small for you to see again, but you'll see them in the slides that you can take home. I'll walk through some of the high-level numbers. For the state, I'll start at the bottom. We expect a total of about $1.1 billion in tax revenue going to the state of Kentucky. And that's about an average of $73 million a year when you average it out over the first 15 years, which is what we'd expect that first lease to be. To the counties, we expect a total Boyd County tax revenue number of about $308 million. Average over the 15 years is about $20.5 million to Boyd County alone. And to green up, that total is $111.7, about $7.5 million average over 15 years. I'll just go into some of the details around what comprises that total number. First is the schools, which we care very dearly about. And the Boyd County school system will see over the 15 years in the construction period about $190.5 million, which is expected to be just under $13 million per year to the Boyd County School District. And for green up, it's about $48 million over the 15 years total, which averages out about $3.2 million per year to Greenup County. To the county itself, 66.4, and that's an average of 4.4. About 25 to Greenup total. to the county. That's 1.7 average per year. And then there's the remaining taxing districts, which I'll just group into one number, including the emergency, community services, fire department, library, health, that sort of thing. In Boyd County, that's 51 million total over the 15 years, about 3.5 million per year. And Greenup County, it's about 40 million total, 2.5 million per year. So I'm sorry to drag you all through the listing of numbers. I don't like to do that normally, but these are really important numbers for the area. So we're excited to be able to have done that analysis. Again, these are estimates. These are subject to change. It's pretty early on, but this is based on the engineering and design we have for the buildings and the investment that we expect to go into the first phase and second phase. These would be the first phase numbers, and we'd expect it to nearly double for the second phase. James reminded me to mention that in these numbers, there are no incentives, tax incentives, no exemptions. That's not what we are seeking. There are some available, and that's not what this project is working with. So I'll hand it over to Katie to talk about jobs and work.
Hello again. So we're excited to share more. First, I'd like to start by thanking John Holbrook, Dr. Ferguson, the trades, and ACTC for welcoming us to participate in yesterday's career event. We had a wonderful day meeting many of you, talking about career opportunities at TeraWulf, and we hope to continue the conversation today. We're excited by the career opportunities and job opportunities that this project will generate for the community. So we want to provide kind of a high-level overview of what you can expect in the coming months and years. We'll need hundreds of workers in the construction space, which we're expecting will start in 2027, with us being fully operational towards the end of 2028. Hundreds of construction roles, up to 100 roles employed directly by TeraWulf once we're operational, from mechanical, electrical, and operational, functional in our offices, and an additional 100 roles through our tenants for their maintenance as well. As I said, we're looking for construction to be in 2027 and fully operational in 2028. Our priority is to hire locally. We want to foster a strong work culture, and we're here to help and hope to meet many more of you while we're here. So please come and say hello if you're interested in learning more about the career opportunities tonight.
Maybe I'd actually take the opportunity to introduce another member of our team, Jim Spoon, who is the Director of Operations. And maybe you can talk a little bit about how you came into the company and what's going on up in New York.
Can you hear me? My name is Jim Spoon. I've been with the company since 2014. Before that, I was in the Navy. So in 2014, I worked at the power plant, the coal-fired power plant. We were notified that the power plant was going to close. So the company actually allowed me to go back to school and get my degree. And then once I got my degree, I went into more of an office role, which became for the data center. Now I am the Director of Operations. So I am stationed at our operating facility in Barker, New York. So if you guys have any specific questions regarding jobs, you can talk to me and ask me questions here. If you want a one-on-one, let me know. Right now, we have about 85 full-time employees that work exclusively for us. When we are done with construction, we anticipate between 130 and 150 for us. And then our customer will also have full-time roles. So we anticipate the total number of jobs full-time will be a little over 300. Like I said, if you have any specific questions about jobs or what the jobs entail, you can find me after this, and I'll be happy to answer.
We wanted to get into some of the topics where we expect, maybe we can talk a little bit first, and then we expect there to be a lot of Q&As as well. Electricity rates and the ratepayer protections. Let's dive right into it. I know this is of utmost importance, and I expect there to be questions that we'd love to answer. So we have a 20-year agreement with Kentucky Power, and that's actually mandated as one of the ratepayer protections by the PSC to have this long-term commitment. There is no ability to walk away from a contract or walk away from utility infrastructure that's being built for the project. It is priced, like I can talk about some of the other protections, but essentially what, at a high level, there is a substation that's going to be put in place next to the hanging rock transmission line. And that's an investment on behalf of the utility. And what they have to do when they structure the energy service agreement, the long-term agreement with the customer, they ensure that the customer's revenue is far beyond what the cost of that infrastructure would be. That's the substation. Then it comes to our facility, and everything from the transmission line in our facility is on our account as well. There's other ratepayer protections that have not been in place with the PSC previously, but are fairly recent as of the last few years. Another one of those is the amount of collateral that's needed. So in addition to having a long-term agreement with revenue that pays far beyond what the cost of that infrastructure would be, there is also a big collateral payment. And what that ensures as a ratepayer protection on behalf of the commission is they ensure that there is no ability for the company to walk away and not have paid for that infrastructure. That money's already been given to the utility to pay for the infrastructure, and they hold on to it as a sort of deposit, if you will. There's another ratepayer protection that's called a billing floor, which is essentially you pay for what you use. Normally in your utility bill, you pay for the electricity you use, but there's a minimum payment of 90%. So we could use, if the customer uses 0 electrons, they still pay 90% of the bill, and that's another ratepayer protection that's in place. All that's to say is that the PSC has a very robust process for these types of projects to be approved. We won't get the ability to build any of that infrastructure to support this project unless the PSC and the Attorney General are absolutely convinced that it's not detrimental to the ratepayers. So there's a long approval process that this has to go through, and it's not completed yet. And so that process it's in and of itself is another sort of form of protection. We believe, wholeheartedly believe, because of the amount we're investing, we wholeheartedly believe that the PSC is going to see this as not only not detrimental to the ratepayer, but a benefit to the local system, and it will, there will not be any rates going up because of this project. And there will be, and instead, we should see sort of an alleviation of pressure in the system because of how much this project is bringing to the utility. So we look forward to going through that PSC process, and the outcome we hope will, we expect that the PSC to see it the way Kentucky Power does. There's a lot of questions related to sort of Kentucky Power rate making. And specific cases with Kentucky Power, and I'll just say that we do have representatives from Kentucky Power, I believe, here today, and they will be happy to answer questions as well. And I think they have, either we're going to have them at a table or at chairs afterwards, after our Q&A. So. Water usage, which is another topic that we would love to talk more about in the Q&A. If people have questions, we've put out some detailed information about it. The judges, I believe, have maybe posted some of the fact sheets city of Ashland that sent in some questions about water usage and also the wastewater treatment. Essentially, it's a closed loop system. We're filling it once at the start, before the start of operations, and that lasts in the closed loop for 10 years. And we've provided some detailed figures for volumes that we'd expect to use on a daily basis. The daily potable use, so we will be connected to the water system to use potable water, just like an office building would use, and that's for the employees. We expect that to be about 5,000 gallons total over the 4 buildings when the project was fully built out. And there was a study done locally on the water system, and it done in collaboration with the city of Ashland and with the counties, and that was looking at a system availability of about 12 million gallons per day. So what was unused and in excess in the current system is about 45 to 55% is being used today, and the rest is remaining capacity that's unused. And so when we talk about our usage numbers, we often talk about those numbers as it relates to that excess water availability. When we fill the building, it's about 400,000 gallons, and that represents about 3% of one day's excess capacity on the system. So there's 12 million gallons per day of capacity that's available on the system and is being unused, and filling one building is about 3% of that in one day. We then add the cooling fluid to that water in the closed loop systems, the propylene glycol. Helpful to know what's in the cooling loop. That essentially helps not allow for freezing in the cooling loop. And then when we dispose of that water after 10 years, we are going to take that water 100% into trucks outside of the FIFCO region and dispose of it in licensed facilities. It's not going into the water treatment plant. There will be no water no processed water from the cooling system going into the water treatment plant. Also, there will be zero discharge into ground waterways, and I just wanted to sort of make that clear. And would love to answer more questions on it and save it for the Q&A so we can get everyone out of here on time. Yeah, yes, definitely going to ask a question. If we can save it for the Q&A, or we need to do it? Yes. So the question was, how often you change the filters in the water, in the cooling system, and all the systems. Yep. That's the only one where the water is. And I've got just the man to answer that question because we have an engineer from our cooling system company that we work with, best-in-class partner, is Data Airflow.
So in terms of the filters and the cleaning of that, so first off, it depends on the particulate level. So we measure that, and there's a pressure reading. And when we have that pressure, it tells us that that filter is now full. So when we're first getting up and running, we're cleaning the water through, getting rid of any residual out of the pipe. You get slag from welding. So that's going to be replaced about every 2 to 3 days for the first month of operation as we're getting that cleaned out. All of those are taken, and that's taken off-site. That's then recycled at a licensed professional. So they're going to take care of that. They're going to get rid of the filters, dispose of them in an environmentally safe way. So that's your first one. After that, you're going to have one filter replaced about every month. And that's going to go through for about 6 months. You're going to do that until you get to stable operation, where you have any impurities out of that water. And at that point, it can be anywhere from once every 6 months to once every 2 years.
Where do they go?
So they get trucked off site. I don't handle the disposal of that. For example, up at in New York, those get taken off. Those are disposed of. No, not landfill. So, yeah, no. That's at the same facility that is taking care of the water that's trucked out. It's typically the same facility. Depending on each region, that's got to be finalized with that. I don't know that I've got that information. Yeah. Sure. So, closed loop systems. They're all over the social media. They get ridiculed. I'll be the first to say that the way that that is represented is pretty awful. As a mechanical engineer, I got into it from environmental science, and there's a term that is based on my philosophy called biomimicry. That is to use nature as a teacher. You can laugh, that's good. Historical systems in data centers for the last 25 years evaporated water directly. It was direct evaporation, direct use. The horror stories that you read about, you see about, things like Meta in Georgia, they're pulling from groundwater, they're decimating the water from the aquifer, and that ends up getting evaporated. So that creates a problem. You have an imbalance between rainfall and extraction. So on the closed loop system, so where you go with this is you're filling up that first time. That water stays there for 10 years. When you compare the water use of that to the direct evaporation, which is where the horror stories are, you're on the order of 1.5% to 2% of the water use in the first year. That's when you fill it. Every year after, it's down to about 0.5%. There is some makeup water. It's a very small amount because you will lose some water out of that system. That gets contained. So there are tanks that we have that contained too, and then that gets removed off-site from the chunk. So when we talk about the scales of the impact, on the most extreme worst case that I've seen, it would be the equivalent of on the order of 2.5 billion gallons of water use per year. The scale that we're talking about here is on the order of 200 to 300,000 gallons. So you cannot even compare these numbers on the annual average use.
Do you have facilities that are using these closed loop systems right now?
Yes, there are. So one of the first ones I designed is in Ellendale, North Dakota. That was for a different client. The systems in Marker, New York are also. The question was, are there existing facilities using closed loop design? So for a chilled water system. Yep, water. So let me first answer this question. I'll come back to it. So on the closed loop side for a data center, the first one that I designed was in Ellendale, North Dakota. That was for 100 megawatts. That's been fully up and running now for about a year and a half. That's exactly what we're talking about here. My team goes through, we test, we commission and validate for any leakage to make sure that it's completely sealed up, that there is no waste. Then all the facilities up in upstate New York, they're using the same system. Some of those have been running as long as a year now. There's other facilities coming online. And so this is relatively new to the marketplace.
So as a scientist myself,
Yep.
what sort of experiments have you done that make
So what experiments have been done? Yeah, we need to wait for the Q&A.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you just can't hear my
Yeah.
question, or
Yeah.
could you repeat it after I ask?
Yep.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll get to Q&A after what type of experiments? So,
Yeah, because you said 10 years for water tanks.
Yep.
Have been running a half.
well, so the same concept of this is what's called a ground source heat pump system. Are you familiar with that?
Say the phrase again.
A ground source heat pump.
What's the third word?
Source.
No.
Ground source. Pump.
Okay, sorry.
Some people confuse it with geothermal. We're familiar with geothermal. Geothermal and ground source heat pumps are a closed loop system. I've worked on those systems and they've been up and running for upwards of 20 years now. So this is not brand new technology. This is newly applied to the data center space because they were making really poor choices for the last 20 to 25 years in how these were built. Bringing this type of system is taking the application of geothermal or ground source heat pump and applying it into the cooling system so that we don't have the water wasted.
Thank you, Mitch, and Mitch will be here for more questions during Q&A. Okay, one more topic, and then we should get right to Q&A so we have time for it. This is what the coolers look like. On top, and the reason it's helpful to bring this up when we talk about noise, there's two types of noise. There's indoor and outdoor. Indoor is inaudible from outside the building, and the outdoor noise is really from those coolers that the picture was just of, which are either on the side of the building or on the rooftop, depending on how the facility is designed. We're expecting they might be on the rooftop, I think, in our plan for this one. Although there's plenty of space on that property, so it might be on the side. The fan, and this is something that maybe Mitch can talk about later, is the cooling system uses a fan that's a low noise technology. And we expect that to be about 55 to 60 decibels, about 100 to 500 feet away from the coolers themselves. Put a few little comparisons up here of how that compares to, like a refrigerator noise. And that's fairly close to the building. There is a topographical benefit to this site where there's a lot of trees and ridge lines as well. And we expect this noise to be completely absorbed. And the train sort of acts as like a natural sound buffer in the area. Well below the EPA's threshold, and we've also done some work with ECTC on making sure that school is very focused on not having anything be disruptive for their students, and has looked into the noise levels as well and decided that it is acceptable for their students, and we don't expect there to be noise heard at the school. Also, I do want to point out, just because I have kind of my phone a friend folks over here, there's another firm we work with, best-in-class partner, not just on noise, but anything environmental. A group called ERM, they work with us on several projects. When we go in, if there's an industrial facility, it hazardous waste or demolition, they are helping us do it. If we're assessing any permitting or environmental issues, they help us do it, and it's been a really good partnership. I wanted to bring up one of the managing partners from ERM, is the name of the company, to talk a little bit about the work they do. Essentially, it's when we go into a project, hopefully you get to know our company a little bit and the way we do business. We look at it through the lens of what's the best way we can do this, not just what's the minimum, but like how do we design this project in the best way possible for all environmental aspects. And John, just introducing yourself.
Hey everybody, I'm Josh Adams. I actually grew up here, and I've worked with companies like TeraWulf all over the country to site these things in the most, or actually at least impactful way possible. Understanding nothing's ever perfect, but these guys usually identify sites that I'm actually happy to work with. I wish all my clients picked them. Like it's about best for everybody, but like you said, it's sited out where topography is going to take care of most of the noise. We'll model all that, there'll be numbers that we can actually show you eventually. I don't have them today. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Josh. It kind of works. I'll just point out, one of the things he said, they do the noise study in Hawesville, which is just ahead of this one, the Hancock County project called Justified Data Campus. That is one of the big topics as well in our engagement with the community. And one of our follow-ups from our first community meeting, similar to this one, was a noise question. We have done studies up in our other facility up in New York, and we started to perform. We're just getting started on it now. It kind of requires us to finish the engineering so that their engineers, third party, can come in and say, okay, tell us exactly what equipment you're using, and we're going to do an acoustical study with every detail. Where are the property lines? What's the topographical terrain, and be able to assess the exact noise study for Hawesville. They're performing that right now for the other project, and we'd like to do obviously one here as well. We'll kick off once we have all the engineering done and then we can hand it over.
Noise was left to the ground. Sound like the sound to the ground. Does that study also include the sound waves that travel through the ground?
Let me ask. Josh, does that address the sound waves traveling through the ground?
Typically, no, but that's something we could definitely look into because the cars and stuff in this area.
And we do have a list. Folks did sign up at the beginning, so I do want to honor the list. Folks signed up for asking questions, and then we have a sheet up here. So this was one as people were walking in. And could I start calling up some folks?
And if we could all, questions is always the most important part of this evening, I've discovered. So if everybody could try and ask their question, in a minute or two, and then give us a chance to respond. And there will be circumstances where we won't know the answer. We are very good about following up, so if we can't figure it out with this group, grab us afterwards, give us the email or phone number, and we'll follow up with those kinds of things, as invariably happens with these things. Thanks.
Whoever calls the name, you call
And-
the name first.
Yes, so the first name, Bryony King, did I get that right? Bryony and hi. And Laura Henson is next, and then William Reeves.
Hello, my name is Bryony King. I'm here with my husband, Charlie King. We live at the end of Anderson Branch. So thank you for coming to talk with us this evening. I'm really happy to hear about your commitment. I'm really happy to hear about your commitment to our community. Specifically about being good neighbors. And the reason I'm here is because we are literally your neighbors. Our residence is going to be the very closest residence to the property. We are actually going to share a property line. It looks like we're going to share it, I know, on 125, but by the look of the aerial view map, it might be 3 sides. There was one map that at the bottom showed your projected prototype of the buildings, the aerial view of the buildings. My initial question that I was going to come up here and ask was, one, if you plan to put fencing and additional foliage around your facility perimeter, is the first question. The second one was, are you going to do environmental soil and annual water testing? It sounds like you're working with a company that might do that. But now I'm more concerned when I saw your picture, that building, CB4, that looks like it's going to be built on a drainage pond. And if that is built on that drainage pond, all of that water will come right down on top of our historic homestead. Our cabin was built in the early 1900s. It's been in my husband's family since the deed books were written, and obviously it's a concern for us. We actually restored the cabin a couple of years ago. So we want to maintain the historical integrity of the property. We have been searching for surveys, property lines. We've been trying to look all over about how you're going to border our property. But now my biggest concern is the CB4 building and how it's going to impact us directly, our pond and our well system.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Brian. So look forward to working with all the information that we need to design this the best way possible. I will say, as the VP of Project Development, I'm the one that kind of comes in from the start of the acquisition, the close of the transaction, and then I bring it to the point where we are building a data center and we have a construction team. One of the things I do is take a site without knowing anything and lay out what this could be, and I wanted to lay it out as to really sort of create some visual and some reference for the project. This is by no means what it has to be, and we have not started our survey work. We just closed this transaction a few weeks ago, and so all the topographical and geotech and wetlands and everything, it's actually performed by our third-party partner, ERM. They have not started it yet. We're just getting to know the property. So I expect, and we'll be taking feedback from yourself, folks like yourselves, about that important issue. But also I expect that we would be changing the design when that geotech survey comes in. As part of this transaction with the property, there was more property up that's not shown in this picture that we could build on, and so we are not forced by any means to fit the buildings here or on that drainage. So excuse the early site layout, but hopefully it provides a little bit of reference of what we're building, and then we'll be adjusting accordingly. But thank you for the question. And then Laura, I believe, was in, yes.
So I think that since some of these decisions weren't just made by TeraWulf, at the previous meeting we had questions that they deferred to you guys because they didn't have answers to them. But there are going to be some questions that involve you and some of our county officials. So would it be okay with county officials that help in the decision-making process to come up and answer questions? County officials? Any decision-making individual county officials, because some of the questions we had at the first meeting, we deferred to TeraWulf, but we have some questions that involve all of you, and we'll probably take all the brains to answer them.
Well,
so if you guys can come up here.
Could I just say, we have a lot of people that want to ask questions of us. I'm not saying they'll be available afterwards, but this was for us to answer questions about TeraWulf. They have open meetings where questions can be asked, but we really don't want to have a whole list of people that would like to get to. If you could just give us our questions, and I'm sure they're available at other times to discuss.
All right, what is the exact date of construction? Like the very first date of construction?
You're not making good brains.
It's pathetic they're not up there.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The question was, what is the exact first day of construction? Maybe this is better. So the question was, when will be the first day of construction? So there is not an exact planned first day of construction the way these projects typically work.
Maybe there won't be one.
I can't predict the future, nor can you. That's a fair statement. But we of course want to. These projects are typically take 12 to 18 months for construction, with the first power becoming available around the fall of 2028. If you backtrack from there 18 months, that would be a good estimator for approximately when the construction should be expected to begin. Around that same time, or perhaps slightly before then, is when we would announce who the end user for the site would be. So typically what happens is we will come, acquire a site, we'll sign the power contracts, which we've done, and then once it's kind of within the window of what is interesting for the end users, the Googles, the Amazons, the Microsofts of the world, we'll then take that to market. We just started that process. That will typically be a 3 to 4 month to up to a 6 month identifying which partner we want to work with. And we'll evaluate them on a number of different bases, but ultimately we'll decide who the customer will be. We'll sign a data center lease contract with that customer, and then very shortly after that, we would raise a debt financing, same as we did in upstate New York. We signed our deal with FluidStack and Google. And then very shortly after, we went to the market to raise several $1 billion off the back of that lease agreement that we signed. So again, when will construction start? October of 2028 minus 18 months is probably a pretty good approximate.
So beginning of 2027.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good.
Because there were 2 different news articles in our local paper where you guys were quoted, you specifically in one of them. So on the June 12th article, it said TeraWulf, this is a quote, I'm sorry.
Yep.
TeraWulf said, let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, there was something about construction starting sooner.
In the third quarter of 2026, July through September estimation.
Yeah, so, and maybe I'll make a clarification, then I'll allow Casey to jump in if he wants. But the construction that I mentioned, 18 months, that's for the data center. There could be construction before that, specific to the substation and the transmission. So AEP will have their substation that they're building. We will separately have the substation that we are building. So the data center itself is an 18-month process. We may, in anticipation for getting that construction process ready, start the work on the on the substation and the electrical components. Is that helpful?
Yes. So your date for 2027 construction is after substation construction. The reason I'm asking is about the permitting, surveying, and deadlines and timelines and things that are required by the county and the city. So let's see. You don't know who your tenant will be, and you don't know what type of data will be stored on these servers, correct?
Yeah, so I'll give you the example of who a tenant would be. At TeraWulf, we're focused on investment-grade customers. Why are we focused on that? Because we're going to be spending a lot of money to build a data center. We want to make sure that they're paying it back. So we're going to be going to, it's going to be a large company, somebody who can commit to, pay us, and also they're going to be effectively paying through the power.
Okay, how many acres of land are going to be disturbed for that construction site?
For the buildings themselves,
just the whole construction site.
So this parcel right here you're looking at is around 130 to 140.
Okay, what permitting have you all got approved? Because we know that there was an NDA signed with some information that should have been given to the public and wasn't. And that is concerning, and there's a lot of mistrust in this room because of that. And that was why I said you guys might want county officials up here with you, since all parties are responsible for those answers. Have you applied for any permitting?
No, we don't have the data center designs done yet. That typically comes a little bit later in the process. Okay. And if it's okay, I'll speak to the NDA portion as well. We're a public company. This transaction is considered, you know, confidential, and, you know, it would be insider information for somebody to know that we're putting, you know, a project like this up. We started looking at this site around February, so there was a previous developer who put the project together. We started looking at it in February, pretty quick transaction for us. You know, we started looking at it in February, conducted diligence, came out, did a number of site visits. So that's around the time that we got involved in the property. So, you know, if we're a public company, we're just limited by what we are actually allowed to share, you know, as our, you know, folks who are also on the project.
So has there been anything that has been approved by county or state government that gives people some sort of allowance to build? Have you gotten approval from anyone for anything? So you said no one applying for permits, anything that has been
No,
submitted,
that
filed?
falls under me as the project developer. I haven't, the last 2 weeks has been busy and I have not gotten to the permitting stage yet. We still have to finish the engineering of the project and be able to lay out exactly what it is we're doing. Usually that, before we can even do that, we start with surveys. So, you know, now that we own the property, we have to do a wetland delineation, we have to do geotech exploration, so checking the soil, and we also have to do geological survey.
Yeah.
Thank you. There's a bunch of, you know, learning we have to do. Then we take that information and say, okay, what's the best way that we should build with this information? And then once we have that design, then we submit it for permits. There were no permits or approvals or anything that were due as part of before we owned the property.
Laura, are you okay if I move on to the next
Well,
question?
we've had some difficulties.
We're trying to respect everybody's time.
Yes, the answers are longer than I anticipated to be. So, let's see. I might give my questions to somebody else in a moment. But pertaining to, you said there's no written or approval of any kind from the state or county to allow this project to move forward. This project is still an idea stage, you only have an idea, and then that's kind of it.
Yes.
Okay, as permitting and surveys are completed, can you make those immediately available to the public?
I'm not.
We will follow whatever the permitting process are, which is a public process. I can't speak to exactly how they are released. Permits are public document.
Yeah, when it goes
Can
to
you
permitting,
do
there's
due
a lot of them we
diligence
have to make
for
public.
our community members and making sure that they are directed to us in a public format?
Yeah,
Just out of
I would also, you know, I mean, one of the things I want to mention with this community meeting too is this is not the only one, this is the first. And I'd like to, you know, whatever cadence is sort of appropriate, in Oslo, we're kind of doing a quarterly check-in. That would be one of the updates I, you know, want to bring to the community and say this is where we're at with the surveys. We can present, you know, what the permit allows for us to present publicly, and then we'll, you know, talk about the updates as we go. I think that would be something that we'd love to share with the community.
We were told that we have all the answers, but we didn't have them last time.
A lot of our questions that did get directed to you.
William Reeves, Mr. Reeves,
Sitting right behind them, he's right there.
you're up.
But if it is, well, we're gonna have to.
Do you have your microphone? Yeah.
I want to thank you.
Still, I think I threw it off, I'm sorry.
I want to thank you all for providing us with information, what you hope happens in the future. I want to ask you about things that happened in the past, but terrible. Can you give us an example of a constructed TeraWulf project and the facilities that were built with the same, or will be built with the same material on this side?
Yeah, this is on. So I think we should look to two examples. The first example is Lake Mariner data. That's in upstate New York, Hartford, New York. That's a 500 megawatt project. This is a 500 megawatt project. It should be substantially similar.
My next question will be, what problems have you encountered with that construction project?
Well, so the question is, what problems have we encountered with the construction project?
The construction project is once completed.
Yeah, so that's an ongoing project. Some of it's operating, some of it's under construction. I mean, you know, and maybe Jim might have something to add. You know, I'm not on the construction team, but look, this is a new technology. You know, we talked about, you know, we're applying new closed-loop technology that hasn't been applied to data center before. You know, we're moving fast. The market wants us to move fast. Our customers want us to move fast. So there's growing pains of that, and I think, you know, I think the community very much welcomes us up there. We have, you know, multi-generation people working at that facility, people who used to work at the coal site. It used to be a coal-fired power plant, and now it's a data center. I think we took a lot of those learnings, we applied them to the project that we have over in Hawesville, which I think is probably the number 2 project that you should look at. And in fact, I would encourage you, if you want to get a sense for what this project would be and, you know, how it's going to impact the community and, you know, what the operation of those facilities would look like, the project in Hawesville, which was the site of a former aluminum smelter, which, by the way, we're on our dime fully demolishing and doing the environmental remediation. We're not required to do that. We're doing about $50 million work that they're doing. That is, again, going to be an almost replica of the project that we're going to be doing here. So, you know, the same, you know, and you'll have the benefit of seeing that 1 year approximately in advance of this project. So, you know, I would urge you to, you know, as that project comes along, we've, again, publicly guided, you know, again, we're a public company, we've guided our investors that we should announce who the tenant will be by the end of this quarter, so that's coming up very soon. And then construction should commence there pretty shortly thereafter. So you'll pretty soon here, you know, I'll guide you in the next several months, you'll get a pretty clear idea of what's going to happen.
What I want to find out is what complaints do you have about the completed plan up there?
Jim, you want to take this? So the question is, what complaints have we had about Lake Mariner data in the community?
Yeah, so Lake Mariner Data started as a Bitcoin operating facility, which is not going to happen here. So the main complaints at Lake Mariner Data were initially about the noise. Since we went to, you know, exclusively HPC AI, we haven't really had a ton of complaints.
How many? How much? How many?
How many complaints?
Complaints about the noise.
When it was Bitcoin, we had a lot of complaints about
No, what's operating now? What complaints have been made about the noise?
No, we've actually brought in people from the town to come in and see the noise levels to give them reassurance about the noise going forward.
But have they made complaints about the noise?
No. Not since Bitcoin. With just AI, HPC, there's not been complaints about noise. Now, our Lake Mariner data site is kind of like this one, where it's kind of secluded, right? It's not in the middle of a big community. Hartford, New York is a very, very small town. So, no, we have not had any complaints about the AI HPC.
Do you have any information about the decibel count of that existing facility?
Yes, it is. You want to talk about that?
So on that end, so decibel count, which we have is the initial equipment. It's around 42 to 44 decibels.
I'm talking about what it is now.
Right now,
Of the decibels.
You guys know sense of that. It said, what is the operating? Like on the Lake Mariner.
yeah, it's at like 55 decibels, 56 decibels at the property line, which is a sound that may home's air conditioning system.
Okay. And you also asked about my question would be, what would keep your lessee from subletting that property our facility to someone else.
So what would prevent them from leasing it to somebody else? Well, we're building a very specific data center. So, these data centers are purpose-built for certain applications. The reason they're leasing it is because they want to use it. Is there a particular person or group that you would be concerned about if they lease it to?
No, I'm just saying you would have no control over that, would you?
I think we do.
Thank you.
Do you even have a tenant for this location?
No, I don't.
What about the one in Western Kentucky? Do you have one?
Mr. Reeves, I'm happy to have your email. I'm happy to look into that and get back to you. I don't believe that, I believe that if we have our lease, there would be language in it about any subleasing would have to be approved by us. But let me talk to the lawyers and I'll send you an email.
Thank you.
Sure. Suzanne Barker Griffith.
Can you hear me? Okay. I just have a couple questions. I look at everything from how a ratepayer sees things, okay? And what I see is power that we have to buy off the PJM market. That affects our bills. It really drives it up. And I know, is that where you're getting your power from this, is the PJM market?
So I believe the power is going to come from AEP's broader system, so we don't know how they're going to get that power. That's something that they're working on right now. And that's probably a great question. I know they have some.
Well, that's interesting. I just read an article about that said that they were going to have to double theirs and that some of that cost would have to go to ratepayers. So that concerns me that you said that, but I'll look into that more. I have another question. On April the 28th, on April the 26th, 2026, Kentucky Power applied for a certificate of public convenience and necessity for a new natural gas generation to be built at Louisa. This is for you. Will power from the new plant be going to TeraWulf campus at East Park to power the data center?
So we understand, you've seen this, that process had nothing to do with our data center. We were not involved with that process at all. Again, we signed for power. AEP is supposed to go out and figure out how they're going to serve that. So that power is, is supposed to come online at the end of 2028. So it will come from the AEP system. But
Okay.
again,
I will be sure and ask Kentucky Power about that. But I just sent questions to Amanda Clark and she did not answer those, but I will ask again. But I will say, I sent the same questions to Mr. Kaya right up there. Stand up. And he said that he would give me those answers the best he could, so I appreciate you. One more question. According to the SEC records in 2025, Kentucky Power securitized $477 billion, and that's before you guys, okay? And that was for the decommissioning of Big Sandy 2. Now, we owe a lot of money on that. We pay 6.37% charge on our bills, and actually it's a little bit more than that. But as I understand it, you guys are getting no discounts, right?
correct.
And you're going to be paying that 6.37%. Do I understand?
We're paying full. We're not getting any special exemptions. We're paying full freight.
And I want you to know right now, I really appreciate that because that's going to help us pay off that bill a lot sooner. But what I was hoping to hear is before Kentucky Power puts another big securitized bill on our bill for the new power plant, that this one would be paid off. And I don't think that's going to happen. But right now, I just want you to know that I appreciate you all helping us pay that bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chris Baldridge. And then it's Ms. Jeanette Burns.
Is that on? Hear me? I think you turned it off. Hello? Can you hear me? There we go. Alright, how's it going? I'm a Greenup County resident. I've been an electrician for almost 20 years. I'm now a public relations major, and I've got just a few questions out here. Can we fire the sound guy? Is that you guys? We're playing for this. So this is what I've written. I've got a few questions for you guys. I don't know how best to proceed. I want to ask you directly, but it seems like I need to address all these guys, so I'm just going to try to get going. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. Like many people here, I'm not opposed to progress, jobs, or investment in our region, but I am concerned about how this project has been handled and what it means for the people who already live here. First, there are serious transparency issues. Residents and state leaders have said that they were caught off guard by this project, and we know non-disclosure agreements were signed behind closed doors. That raises the question, who made these decisions, and why were there people affected left out until afterward? Second, I want to understand the real financial risk, because we've seen projects fail here before. If this deal falls through or doesn't deliver on its promises, what burden falls on taxpayers? Are there enforceable protections? Third, we need to talk about energy and fairness. We are being told this project won't impact local ratepayers, but at the same time, Kentucky utilities are actively seeking rate increases and bills have already been rising. Our Attorney General has stated that Kentucky Power reliably turns a profit for its parent company, even while asking customers to pay more. And across the country, studies show that when utilities expand infrastructure for large data centers, those costs are often spread across customers, not just the companies using the power. So that begs the question, what legally binding guarantees and protections are in place to ensure that this project does not raise electric bills or shift infrastructure costs onto local residents? Because right now, even state officials and energy experts admit that there's no absolute way to guarantee that protection under the current rules. Fourth, let's talk about trade-offs. We're looking at a massive multi-billion-dollar energy-intensive project for a relatively small number of jobs. So we have to ask, is this the best use of our land, infrastructure, and resources? Finally, this project won't be completed until close to 2030. Technology changes fast. My phone is outdated as soon as it's manufactured. How do we know this project won't be outdated before it's finished? And if it is, what happens to the community then? Why should the people here believe this project will benefit them when the risks appear to be shown by the public, but the profits are not? We want clear answers, written protections, and accountability. And I think the last thing I've cut through all the puffery, and I have the questions laid out 1 through 6 if you'd like. My last one being, I've heard claims that material misstatements were made to shareholders. Can you clarify your recent legal and regulatory activities? Are there any current or previous securities investigations for TeraWulf?
Not that I'm aware of. I'd love to get your questions also, and if we can't get to all of them or as fully as you'd like, I'd be happy to follow. I'd like to say on the NDA, at the risk of perhaps people not accepting my answer, I always try to put myself in your shoes, and at the same time, hope you would do the same here. James mentioned earlier, we are a publicly traded company, and there are unbelievable laws and regulations by the SEC that are imposed on publicly traded companies about material disclosures. And if they are made before they are properly vetted by the SEC and your investors, fines, lawsuits, really heavy-duty stuff. So you're in this tough situation where you understand the public wants to know about the project as soon as they can. But at the same time, you can't disclose this legally. And also competitively. So you're in a situation where you're caught between both of those things. So in this circumstance, I think on our side we understood that we're going to have to disclose this at the time that the SEC says we're going to have to disclose this, and then we're going to have to move quickly to try and get accurate information to people in the community about what's going on here. And that we're probably going to take a hit that we didn't get that information out as quickly as we should have or could have. In this circumstances, lawyers are very clear about what you can say and when you can say it. So I don't want to say I apologize for that, but I understand why that happened, why when NDAs are signed, and there are people that are saying, how come we didn't know about this? But this project wouldn't be here before you or any county, I have to say, unless companies like us had assurances from local officials that they weren't going to disclose material that could legally put in jeopardy or our competition. So that's the explanation I can best give you on the NDA, and I can have James follow up with
Elected
that.
officials aren't obligated to this like you are, though, are they?
So the second question was, if this project fails or underperforms, please promise jobs and investment unrealized what legal boundary protections.
And enforcement, because I see that a lot in the education sector, just because somebody breaks the rules doesn't mean there's actually a governing body that can enforce those rules.
So when we, and I think the important one here probably is with respect to power. So as part of this, remember, we talked about this, maybe is building a new substation. When we signed those agreements, we agreed to post letters of credit. We are posting in the near future, and it ramps up over time, over $600 million of letters of credit. If we walk away, that $600 million plus letter of credit is on us, meaning that if AEP, Kentucky Power, went and started building a substation, then we walk away, they would draw from that to pay for it. Also, last year, the PSC came out with a new ratepayer protection scheme. We're required to do a 20-year contract, meaning we have those letters of credit. About half of that will stay outstanding throughout the life of the project. That represents roughly 2 years of payments. So if we walked away, we have a termination payment representing 5 years of payments that we would have to make up front. They would also have the letters of credit outstanding. So that's another protection. And then we're required to pay for 90% of what they're providing us, every day of the year. So even if we're only, and we don't plan to use 90%, so we actually will be paying for more than we're using. These data centers typically operate 50, 60, 70, 80%, depending on the day and what's going on, but we're going to be paying 90%.
So to that, what enforceable guarantees exist that the project won't increase local utility rates or shift infrastructure and grid upgrade costs onto taxpayers?
That's a fair question. So previously, and the reason they put these ratepayer protections in place, where you have people that were signing large energy contracts, but they didn't have these long terms, they didn't have these required to pay 90%. So as an example, there was the Bitcoin mining project that we're aware of that they left the infrastructure and I don't have all the details, but as an example of what could happen, maybe somebody built infrastructure, but then they left, and then they're no longer paying. Here, as I just said, we're posting these letters of credit, which the utility can draw on, and we also have a termination payment. We required to pay 5 years of fees. That's the only way that we can walk away, and that's a lot of money. That will pay for the infrastructure. The payments that we're going to make when you actually do the math, but the 90% the revenues will exceed the cost of the infrastructure that's being built.
So what entity will serve to make sure that's done?
So this is governed, we sign these contracts under an approved PSC IGS tariff. So, the AG's office also has the Office of AG Ratepayer Protection. So that's another check and balance. They're allowed to look at that and say, hey, PSC, I know this is what you agreed, but they might raise their hand and say, hey, we're not sure this exactly works. So there's checks and balances that allow to ensure that the ratepayer is in fact being protected.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll just add, as it relates to the question about are we staying around? I mean, this property in East Park has been vacant, I believe, for 28 years, and there was obviously a big project that was planned for there with Brady, and that didn't materialize, and that was a big loss of tax revenue. And this is maybe more qualitative and high level in details, but we're very invested in this project. We already are very invested in this project. We're committed to this community. We're committed to building this project. It's
and tax revenue flow in the community. And we'll be here for the long run. We don't sell our projects. We continue to maintain ownership of the building and then have the leases for the long term. That's what's best for the business. And I'll just say that the tech, you brought up this question about whether or not the technology is going to change and there's upgrades. The longevity of the project. I just want to touch upon that. The great thing about what our company builds is it's pretty simple. It's a building with power and cooling. Where the technology changes is really in the server racks. And so you might see our tenants change their servers, and they have the ability to. They have the ability to swap servers in and out as they need to. And our building doesn't go anywhere. Our value add as TeraWulf, where we bring the power and the cooling to their racks, doesn't go anywhere. So the project is not going anywhere, even if the technology evolves over time. Just wanted to address that.
One other point I want to make with respect to those letters of credit that I said that we'll be posting, and we'll be posting some pretty large letters of credit here soon. That's capital that our company will have at risk. So we're going to be invested in this project. If we walk away and decide not to build a data center, then we're walking away from hundreds of millions of dollars that we've already invested, not to include, the investment that we made with the site and so on and so forth. Yeah, so again, this probably falls under, you'll know relatively soon probably, this probably falls under what is non-public information, but we're working with somebody, it's a very well-known thing.
But one of the concerns from the community is that AEP and TeraWulf have some of the same shareholders.
Jeanette Burns?
Well,
Just
I would still like to have that last question answered.
I'm sorry?
Demand or market conditions change?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question was, what happened if demand or market conditions change? That's a great question. I care about that question a lot too, because we're going to be investing a lot of money. We're going to be investing $3.5 billion into this data center. Yeah, exactly. So, and that's why I mentioned when we're going out to identify who the customer will be, we're looking for, again, an investment grade company, somebody like a Google, a Microsoft, and Amazon, somebody who can pay the bills. Somebody, we won't be able to raise the financing for this unless it's a good customer. And when we sign that lease with that customer, we want to make sure that we're getting paid too. So we make them sign up for a 15-year term so that we can pay off the investment that we've made. So if, we would be highly there's no incentive for us to have, signing up for a lease that the customer is not going to stay there for at least the initial term and beyond. Hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, I'm going to walk out the middle here. Okay, I can address all of you this way. I got kind of a big mouth, so. Okay, first of all, I want to thank the lady and gentleman here for giving us an opportunity to ask some questions. I'm a Kentucky native, and I am concerned. I have lived in this area, this region, all my life. And all my life, I have been seeing our people exploited, usually by big companies from other areas that move in, make a big mess of pollution and other things, and move out. Now, I have seen this, I've heard about the dangers of data centers, but I just recently researched this. And I am concerned, like I said, that pollution and health risks, I think, are great. Now, I have read that the data centers use gas turbines, and they also use diesel-powered backup generators. Now, those emit high levels of nitrogen oxides, which are very dangerous. Now, something I remember is about 20, 25, maybe 30 years ago tops, in this area, we had a cancer rate, some types of cancer, 4 to 5 times as high as the rest of the nation. Now, there was a reason for that. Now, it's lower to be more like the national average due to a lot of steel mills closing, and Ashland Oil actually put in something called a vape recovery system. Reason I know about that is my husband was an inspector. His main job was to make sure the vape recovery system worked, and it did help. Now, what I am so concerned about, and my question is this, it's a twofold question. How long do you expect to be running these dangerous turbines and generators? And the second part of that is, are the older data centers still using theirs?
Thank you very much for the question. That's a great question. One thing that I think you'll be very happy to hear, we are actually new entrants into the space. We don't do full diesel backup on our site. Most data centers that you see today, for every megawatt that they're drawing from the grid, they're going to have a megawatt of diesel. We don't do that. Why don't we do that? Because it's actually bad for business. The diesels that people have on their site are used as backup generation. When you think about the cost of what it takes to build these data centers, those diesel generators that run once a month for about 10 minutes for testing on the historical, not ours, but other data centers, it's about 20 or 30% of the cost. So that's cost that we don't want to spend, because if we don't spend that and we charge the customer the same rate, we're actually going to make more money. So what we do instead is we identify sites that are in really good areas that have strong connections to the grid. So here we're connected to the 765 kV line. It's very high voltage, very robust, and so we're going to have 2 lines running connected from the 765 to our site. So that's how we get our redundancy. We get our redundancy by having 2 transmission lines. We're not going to have a 1-for-1 diesel backup. It doesn't make sense. We don't want to do that because we actually make less money. Yeah, again, it's the way that we do this, we have a piece of equipment that's called the UPS. It's effectively a battery. And the reason, maybe I'll tell you why people do diesels. The reason that people have diesels is because historically a lot of the end tenants were very concerned about making sure that they have power to their computers, their GPUs, whatever, for 99.999% of the time. When we went to market the first time in upstate New York, we were asking them, why do you guys really need that? Like, why do you need 99.999% of the time? What we care about is if we do lose power to the site, as in if the grid loses power for whatever reason, what we pitch to our customers is we just want to make sure that your equipment is safe. So how do we do that? We have short-term batteries that run the cooling systems for a short period of time that continue to run that closed-loop system through those hot components in the racks to ensure that we bring them down to a safe temperature. And that's what we say, hey, okay, let's say you lose 10 minutes of the year because you don't have power. Who cares? It's going to cost 20-30% less, and you don't have to have. We think it's crazy to build a whole backup power plant on site just to support 10 minutes of the year.
Okay, so we can go on record that you are not using the diesel backup generators then, correct?
So we will not be using a 1-for-1. We maybe have a very small amount. I'm not sure if they'll be natural gas or diesel or.
So a small amount, you're going to be using a small amount.
Do you want to maybe?
Sure, yeah. So we're designing this right now in Hawesville.
and are looking at, there's for what's called the meet-me room where the fiber comes in, there's backup generators, and again, it's tiny. We are looking, there's gas that comes to the Century Aluminum site. Hello? Gas gensets there, and it's a very small amount using the existing gas that they already had coming to the site. There's another technology that we really love, that's a fuel cell, and we've looked at that. Again, we're not, we haven't commenced the engineering for this project yet, but in Hawesville we're looking at this where there's a fuel cell that can use gas and it has zero emission, no NOx coming out of it. It's just, it's kind of similar to a hydrogen, if you've heard of that. And so there's several technologies that we can use that are not turbines. And we're very, cognizant of the community's awareness and of a particular technology, and that gets factored into the engineering decision.
So what I would guide you again to look at our upstate New York Lake Mariner site. We're not doing a full one-for-one. Same thing in Hawesville, we're not doing a full one-for-one. It's not good for our business to do that. No, so it's not even a question of like what's cheap and what's expensive. It's we're already connected to the grid, and we have an agreement with Kentucky Power KT to give us power. If we were to put generators on, we would basically be doubling our spend, and we'd still only be using the power from the grid. So from a business perspective, it just doesn't actually make sense for us.
So we can move along, and we do want to realize you guys are taking your time at a dinner here, but we're going to stick around and answer questions. Paul Burns, I believe, is next.
Okay, can you hear me? About everybody pretty much said what I want to say, but I got a few things. And my concern is more about the communities, about the people. This is important for me. These are fairly poor people. You guys, if you get back in there, pretty good life. A lot of them, or individuals. And when you come in, promise that you're going to do something, I expect you to do it. I'm going to hold your hand. I won't be down in front of you. And when you say you're going to bring good jobs, I expect you to bring good jobs. I heard you're going to bring good jobs, but I know there's not going to be very many good jobs. And, you're busy. But there's going to be something. And I hope they're not paying jobs. I hope they're something like 80, 100,000 a year. Oh, that's not what I have to run now for everybody's people. And we're going to need it in this area. And what I've heard so far, your construction site, it's going to be pretty clean. What I can tell, I'm going to say something, but I'm going to make a lot of people do that. But this is not for you guys, this is a lot of politicians we got. We got a lot of companies that shut down in this area. And when they shut down in this area, they leave the whole thing together. We got acres of riverfront that can't be used over to and nobody seems to care. They say it needs to be cleaned up, and some says, well, we'll come there and do the family. That's what they say. And but this is really for local politicians. I don't know who you are or where you're at, but you need to be thinking about all around and including the women. It needs to be cleaned up. It needs to be cleaned up. You need to do your job. I don't mind. I'm 7 years old and I'm still going. I don't know how much more I got to go, but I'd like to see this place grow. And I'd like to see it consistent. So let's all do our job. Let's all going together big good citizens, do what we need to do.
Mr. Burns, thank you for your honesty. We can't really speak to things that have happened in the past, and I don't expect you to trust us or become our best friends tonight, but we tried our best to get information out as soon as we could, and we're here to start the relationship. You don't earn trust overnight. You got to prove it, and that's what we plan to do. And judge us by our actions as we move forward. But I do appreciate your directness and your honesty in talking to us.
Well, I'm going to do it. I think we should stick with it. And the community needs to be with it. And it's a good thing.
Yes, sir.
We look over each other's back. You put the ground, we want to play that. You put the air, we want to play. If we're bad neighbors, we want to hang ourselves over there too. But y'all know what I'm going to have to know.
Thank you. Gail Lincoln. Gail Lincoln. Okay. Dr. Aggie Vanderpool. Those answers are public. The information that was provided is public. It's a public record. I think the classified thing kind of was
The simple answer
formal
is actually,
error.
I got it. It's a really simple answer. It was a draft. It was a draft. Now that it's public, now that it's public, it's not obviously confidential.
Not knowing that was a draft, obviously, here.
Yeah, well, thank you. But some answers are actually pretty easy.
So, I have several questions, and some of them concern the system feasibility study that TeraWulf did, finding that 12 million gallons daily excess capacity for the national water treatment system. I'm going to provide these questions to you all, and again, this is for so little time. So I'm going to leave copies of those with you all to answer and get the public. What I'd rather do is start to get focus on something
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it does. So that's on-site, and that's, we keep in a tank, and then we, yeah, so, and this was in the water usage fact sheet that we put out as well, and also in the responses we sent to City Ashland about the water. So the water, we use a total of, I think it depends on the hot days of the year, somewhere 300, 400 hours per year, and we use them to mist. And then we are going to, refill those tanks with water, and we want to explore different ways to refill those tanks.
Off that volume, the final volume. So to highlight what the misting system is. So when we design these data centers, they expect for us to load. So we look at historical climate data. So this is available from NOAA, typical meteorological year data. We take that data and we look at what is the extreme of extreme case that can happen anytime out in a 20-year band. So what can happen for 1 hour over 20 years. And so the data center tenants ultimately want that design to be capable of handling those extreme conditions. So when we have to design the infrastructure, it has to work for that case. When we work through the design of the misting, it's to determine the number of hours. So mentioned 300 to 400 hours. That's on the worst year in a 20-year history. That's what can happen. And so then the storage volume is sized to match that. Most years, you're barely touching that storage volume. Most years, you might use it for 60 to 80 hours. And actually, the manufacturer of the equipment, they won't guarantee their warranty if you go over 375 hours.
So is that based on atmospheric temperature?
Yep.
And what is the atmospheric temperature where that misting system will kick on?
Where it becomes critical is at above 94 degrees Fahrenheit.
Above 94
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, given that 300 hours is about 12 days, I just wanted to ask if any of you all actually been in Kentucky in July or August?
Yep. And that it's hot. But it's not that hot every hour of that day. Yep. So it's triggered by that atmospheric temperature for those hours when it's above. If you look at the data, this is NOAA data, it's publicly available.
So what are your projections then on how often that 6 million gallons per building will have to be refilled given an average summer?
The number of the volume that we were saying per building is actually for the entire year usage. How often we have to fill it is start, when we use water to mist during some of the hottest hours that Mitch is talking about, then we'll start refilling some of the tanks using those. But it's not the 6 million gallons to refill. That's the usage over the entire year. It's hard to give a daily number for that, so I just gave it. What's that?
That you would not empty a tank in the course of the year?
I just don't know how big the tank is going to be, but it's, no, we will, yeah. Well, we don't need all 6 million gallons at once. That's over the course of the entire year. So it's probably going to be a much smaller tank. That's a great engineering question that I'd love to dig into. And we've submitted those questions before, so you know where to send them. And I would love to come back with new set of questions. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think maybe, it would be great to do two things. One is, I would also, the study with the city about the system availability actually was performed previously from the developer that we purchased the project from.
We'd like to do an additional study and confirm those numbers. And then also like to revert on some of your more technical questions, and then we can make those answers public like we did.
Make that feasibility study.
The feasibility study public too, yeah. I think that would be very important to everyone, that you know you have the water here.
I'm going to hand off my question and have some visual colleague of mine here. But I would just like to leave all of you terrible business on that. I have been very blessed this summer to be able to teach the Kentucky Government Scholars Program. So I work with some of the best and brightest of our young minds in the state. And all of us here, every day that I see those young, bright faces, I am reminded that that all of us have a responsibility to secure the future of young people. And I feel very strongly about this. We want assurances from TeraWulf that you are not going to damage our natural resources and raise the cost of living in this area so that our youth cannot stay there. We want a guarantee in writing that if TeraWulf builds this data center and it goes south for whatever reason, spills, accidents, obsolescence, that you are going to clean up your mess and not let our children.
Thank you very much for your questions. We agree with this. And let me give you an example. At Hosdale, at the aluminum smelter that we purchased, we're actually cleaning up the mess of somebody else. We're spending about $50 million and no one required us to do that. It's happening. We don't need it right here. We're doing it.
Thank you. Bryson Blevins, and then Ellen Steele.
My name is Bryson. I'm also a teacher at North County High School. I work with you back there. I'll be able to do it all day. I'll do it louder.
He's also a teacher and he also yells at children all day.
Our question is largely revolved around the fact that you said that excess water is going to be used by the national system around 45 to 55%. What do you need excess in that system where no drawdown is going to occur into that supply, in this supply, in the state?
The two water uses we talked about, so three. One, we fill up the water in the closed-loop system from the city water main line, and that represents about 3% of the daily excess.
So to fill up the system one time requires 3% of the excess water
for that day. And then the second use is the bathrooms and sanitary potable water, or similar to the office buildings, having the same number of employees. And that's, with all 4 buildings, about 5,000 gallons per day. So that's our sort of daily usage. And then there's, when we refill, we're sort of topping up the misting tanks in the summer. That's the third use.
How often are drawdowns planned?
Well, we'll be using the water daily for bathrooms and potable. Oh, after.
So it's minimum 10 years up to 15 years. So what is done on that, you're measuring pH level. So if the pH level goes too low, that then becomes problematic and corrosive to the pipe. So in the system, we're monitoring pH. Historically with 25% propylene glycol, food grade glycol, we purposely are going that route. There's other glycols that are awful. talk about it because it's not an option. But at about 12 years on average is when the pH started to go up. At that point in time, you have a drawdown and refill that's 400,000 gallons.
Well, the biocides that are going to be added to that water, are
That-
they going to be stored on site?
The biocides that are added, that will be stored on site. That's going to be in storage, that is contained. And then when the drawdown is completed, that is done in tanks and taken off site, so that way it can be done at a facility. So that is not going into the water treatment, that is not going into the ground.
Who is evaluating the excess, the waste that are going to be removed from?
So, I mean, honestly, we're so early, even the 6 million gallon reference there, I think that's a block number because we haven't done all the engineering, but we've been working with Nalco on other sites. They have handled a lot of wastewater and aspects of that. Now, we also look at other providers in the region if there's someone that's more local. So every site that has to be evaluated. We're not talking about filling this up with water for close to 2 years at this point, a year and a half to 2 years at best. And so sometime in 2027, we're going to have an evaluation of who's best suited in the region to take care of that.
Are you planning to take into account the testing availability of water as we keep for longer periods of drought?
Absolutely. So the reason I highlight earlier, the closed loop, even with the mist, the amount of water that we're talking about, you're talking about 2% of the water use. So I live in Oregon, and in Oregon, right, we're temperate rainforest. Everyone says we have plenty of water. In Prineville, Oregon, Meadow went in there. What did they do? They did direct evaporative cooling. It was fine with one Meadow building. And Meadow did a second building. Then Apple said, oh, that's a cool spot. We'll do 2 buildings. And Microsoft added a building. Then we had 5 buildings pulling off of that aquifer. And they destroyed that aquifer, all with direct evaporative cooling. I saw that happen firsthand. The state came in, and they can now no longer run that facility during summer months because of the watershed issues. It became a sand issue. So when they lost that ability to run their computer, they now have an asset that's essentially worth nothing for 3 to 4 months of the year. So the reason for going to the closed loop system, and the reason I highlight that technology's been around for 100 years. Geothermal wells in Klamath Falls, Oregon, has been running for 60 years. So you have the technology, we're applying it to data centers, so it's new for data centers because we're optimizing the water side to reduce that burden. Because the drought risk, the water tolerance risk, we have to address it. If the data centers don't address it, it's pointless to even build this.
Finally, last question. What are the emergency remediation plans in place should the biocide spill, or should the water first into the local environment?
Just like any other industrial facility, it'll have a spill prevention control plan. It'll be monitored by EPS or any requirements. So if a spill happens and you report the state, it'll be cleaned up. I mean, there will be plans put in place. It'll be outlined. It'll be a public permit so they can see them. Just like Marathon, you can pull their SPCC plans online on the state website.
All heavily regulated.
Ellen's Mills and Landon Gould.
So a lot of people left because they couldn't understand anything that was being said. We had a lot of people that had hearing problems and such that left, but I've heard that some folks are watching Tri-State Media Services live, and it's clear, so we watch it. All right. So I have a question for you, sir. Is this the last meeting we're going to have with you? Just yes or no, or?
No.
Excellent. All right, so the next question is Bloomberg reported in April that more than half of the U.S. data centers planned for this year are now expected to be delayed or canceled, not for lack of money or land, but because the specialized gear needed to step down grid power and distribute it safely inside hyperscale facilities is in critically short supply. Lead times have stretched to 3 to 5 years for large power transformers. There isn't enough transformers, switchgear, and other critical electrical equipment to bring the projects online. So my question to you is, as of today, do you have the transformers purchased and scheduled for delivery in order to bring these buildings online in the time frame set forth, or will you be running those diesel generators?
Thank you for the question. So the answer is, do we have those transformers secured today? No, we're very close. So for this specific project. So they've been identified and they're available.
So my other question is, you keep saying over and over again that you're going to take the blow down and you're going to load it in trucks and take it somewhere. Where are you taking it? Like, whose community are you taking it to? Where is it going to?
So and maybe you want to jump up and shout about this. The answer is it will go to a licensed facility. It's too early because we're so far away and we're early in the planning process, so we haven't, I think we maybe mentioned this before, we haven't identified that specific facility. We're happy to make that available when we do select that facility. It's a bit early in the planning process to have identified that, but knowing that that's important to you, we're happy to make that
I want to make
available.
sure it's not in the state of Kentucky. I wish it was going nowhere, but, All right, so I have a question. I don't know anything about technology. So you're building the building. You're going to lease it out. Google made a major investment in you. And I read an article that was published in 2025 that said they wanted to get into Bitcoin mining and cryptocurrency. So
So I think I know where this question is going. We're not going to do Bitcoin mining. It's not a good business. This business is just, frankly,
I know you said you would, but my concern is I read somewhere I thought that Bitcoin mining and cryptocurrency runs hotter. So if you're leasing out your space that you built, how are you going to control your tenants?
So the facility that we're building is fundamentally very different. On a per megawatt basis, this is going to cost about $10 million for the data center itself per megawatt. A Bitcoin mining facility costs about $500,000 per megawatt. So if somebody were to run Bitcoin mining in the type of data center that we're building, it would take them 100 years to make the money back. You just would never do that.
All right, and then this is a long shot, but I'm going to ask it. Are you all willing to publish your electricity bill and your water bill every month so that we can make sure you're sticking to what you said you would?
That's a good question. I didn't say that back. We're not going to make any commitments today, but we'll discuss that.
Well, I think it would build some faith in the community because I've studied data centers now for 3 weeks, of which I really wasn't happy doing, by the way. And none of is good. The water usage is really critical around here. Y'all probably don't know this, but up where I live, people haul water to live, and we watch every drop. So that is why we want to know for certain that you are going to stick to what you say and not steal the water, not pollute the water, and just stick to what you agreed to.
So, the first thing I'm going to ask is, were you all aware that the process you purchased this property from was illegal? Because in Kentucky, statute is 67.0802, any purchase of public land, which this was, requires public notice before signing. So all of your purchase was done in private without our notification. That's against state law.
I believe I have your email here. I'm happy to take the site, talk to the lawyers, and get you an answer.
We certainly don't believe our purchase is illegal, but we're happy to follow up. If you want to send us what statute you're pointing to, we'll take a look.
Also, you had our elected officials sign NDAs because you claim you're publicly traded. You have to protect yourself for SEC regulation. Public officials that are elected are not legally bound by NDAs. You all cannot enforce it. They can break it, and you have no power over it. So, why did you approach these officials asking them to sign NDAs when they weren't enforcing them?
Again, Mr. Gould, we believe they were legally enforceable, and I'm happy to give you a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm happy to give you kind of the lawyer's explanation for why this was all legal.
Arguably, they might not have been able to specify the client for trading reasons, but they could have 100% anonymously said that there was a client interested in this property and what it was used for. So this was all done in secret to mislead the people because you didn't want pushback.
As I said, I'm happy to get you the lawyers and legal sites on why this was legal, and I appreciate your opinion.
But you're claiming that you care about the community, but you directly subverted the community.
I would take that we're here today and have committed that we're going to be here for the long haul, and this is the first public meeting that we will engage with. And that's, you have to judge us on our actions, and I hope that you will.
Another thing is, you all keep going on about these security agreements you have with AEP, but all those go out the window if you all file bankruptcy. You're not legally bound to them at that point. So then AEP will push the cost on us because it won't be recoverable from you.
So that the letters of credit are secured by the bank. So the bank will effectively guarantee that payment. That's what a letter of credit does.
If you file bankruptcy, they'll just sell it off anyways, and the AEP probably won't get most of it.
We're happy to look. We don't have, I wish we had all the answers. We can follow up with you on that too. That's not how we see it, but.
Also, under I say the county should have demanded a environmental protection bond from the company before they even talked to you. Because if you all just go bankrupt and disappear, then somebody has to clean it up. And if you all had paid bonds to the county, then they could. Or as of now, they couldn't. Thank you.
And then Heather Hayes.
I'll try to make this quick because a lot of my stuff's already been answered today. My question is, with how much we are being asked for us to move this project, it's likely to harm environment and economy, both of which we discussed a lot today. How can we expect to see any sort of return of the data center for our community? The CEO of TeraWulf himself has recently sold about 300,000 shares for about $900 million. If you're about to start on this big project, why would you kick it off with one foot outside of the door?
So the management team is still on this very large majority of the stock. So No, he's not stepping away. He's still, you can look online publicly how much he still holds. He holds a lot.
Are you starting to sell his stock?
Well,
You started the process of his stock about this report came out. That 50% of data centers.
I gotta tell you, again, I'm happy to get back to you. I don't know about all of this share stocks. We're here to talk about the Muslim Data Center. I can guarantee you that the management team owns a huge portion of this company and are committed to it for the long haul.
yeah, the management team has also been working together with the same individuals for 20, so like the core executives of this company have been working together, like those same individuals for 20 plus, close to 30 years in some cases. So this isn't, nobody's running away from the company. That's the furthest thing that this is.
But you see why selling stocks at this critical point would be a red flag. And I would also be curious, I know we were about to ask you, or like a big, it's not today. Were they aware of this selling?
Well, I mean, look, I don't track who sells stocks and who keeps stocks. People get compensated in stock, they keep some, they sell some. That's a personal decision. Our executive
Personal decision with the CEO.
Our executive team holds a lot of shares in this company. They're heavily invested, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Can you speak for why the investor or why the CEO decided to sell?
No, I can't speak for anybody else. I can speak for myself.
Thank you, Jacob. Heather Hayes. She left. Okay. Clayton Wills. And then we have Donna McCown.
Hi, my name is Clayton Wills. Thank you all for being here today. So before I ask my questions, I want to say that I'm not 100% against this project. I understand that there can be economic benefits such as jobs, taxes, new businesses, as well as the influx of new workers that come in and will be shopping at our stores, eating in our restaurants, enjoying the things that this community has to offer. Let's talk about jobs. Is there a written guarantee for the number of our union workers that will be working at this facility?
At this date, there is not. We are in discussions with the unions and with the goal of trying to develop an MOU on hiring.
Some people, you tell me what disagree, but some people believe that AI and HPC facilities can just suddenly turn to Bitcoin mining. But that's not true, is it? You use a totally different server for AI and HPC than you do for Bitcoin mining, right?
Yeah, it would make economically zero sense. It's very expensive equipment. You would never make a return if you were trying to mine Bitcoin with this equipment or in data centers. You wouldn't.
So let's touch back on the noise. When you did your noise study, how many chillers were used in that study? Or used in the study?
So the chillers are all indoors, so that noise doesn't contribute to the outdoor sound. That's all in the soundproof area. So the dry coolers, so I believe it's 17 per building. And so when we go through the noise study, there's a couple things, right? It's probably what you're getting at. Two things that sound the same actually sound like more. And then as you group it, you double and double and double, it gets louder. So for each doubling, that's 3 decibels. So when you start off at something that's 44 or 45 decibels, and you get to 17, oh, that's 63 decibels or 64 decibels. However, then when you start to go 100 feet away, you start to drop your decibel level. And from 100 feet away to 200 feet away, you then, every time you double your distance away, you reduce 4 decibels. So as you go further away, the property line now pushes out close to 5,000 feet from the vehicle. Even if it's 3,000 feet, you're down under 55 decibels.
As a registered nurse, I have concerns regarding the health and well-being of the residents of the surrounding communities. Large studies on the health of citizens near or within a certain proximity are just not available. However, there have been some small studies done. One in Michigan found that fine particulate matter was increasing the rate of heart disease. Nitrogen oxide, which is harmful to the lungs, causing an uptick in asthma and other related lung diseases. In an interview on Power Analysis, your CFO, Patrick Fleury, I believe that's his last name, said that you will not be using diesel as backup generators, but you will be using GTs, which are the gas now. Is that correct?
So let me clarify, that's for a different site. So the question was, will we be using CCGTs here? The answer is no. CCGT is, large scale power plant. We have another project in Maryland where we are considering building CCGT, a natural gas power plant, but here that will not be the case.
The SEC doesn't actually prohibit publicly traded companies from discussing possible new locations in public, does it?
I think this would I believe the answer, and we can come back and give you specifics from our legal team if you would like, but this would be a material transaction for us, so it's a very large company. It may not be material for us, this would be material. This represents an important, a really important kind of site for our company. Just the actual revenues that it would bring to our company, and that's what it's material.
So, okay.
Yeah. And then also, just beyond that, for competitive reasons, we find, the site, this area very attractive. Our competitors probably also find it the same. So if we were going around and talking about it, you would have 10 people coming in and, competing on the same site. So just from competitive standards.
So are you planning to do anything to help mitigate any possible pollutions that are going to come that can affect the residents?
Yeah, I'll let some of our experts speak after this, but just taking a step back, the philosophy of our company is we want people to, like I said, judge us actions. If you look at our other projects in Hostel, we're coming in, there's that aluminum smelting, there's a lot of environmental concerns that are left behind from smelting. Again, we're going in, we're cleaning that up, we're demolishing the site, it's going to look better, it's going to be cleaner, it's going to be healthier. Again, no one asked us to do that, we're doing that. We think it's something that we do to be a good neighbor. And why do we want to be a good neighbor? It's A, it's because of care, B, it's also a business. If we come in, we hope that the more we come and talk to the community, not the people that actually live here, they'll actually start to realize this is like myself, this is the first many times we're coming in, but if you actually like us, we can continue to grow. Hopefully, that's our goal.
See that?
No, I was just going to say, I think we've missed a point here tonight is that we bought the last 2 operating coal plants in the state of New York six years ago. With the idea, and we went to the governor and the local folks and kind of said, we know that you're trying to phase out coal here in New York, but we believe sites like this are going to be where energy transition happens. We didn't predict it was going to be AI or HPC or Bitcoin. We just knew with big power lines coming in, industrial zone, relatively secluded user sites where something promising is going to happen. But along with taking that, we also took the risk of a coal plant with ash piles and environmental regulations that we had to file. And we do. Those are much better off sites now that we took them on rather than let them lay fallow for 20 years looking for a buyer. A little bit of a different situation here as well is that this is already a reform brownfield site, but there are some characteristics around it that we're in this, and if there's an environmental problem, we got to fix it.
In addition, you know, it's going to be an operating investment facility, so there'll be air modeling, it's going to be the emission. You know, there'll be on-site on-site independent monitors as well. These things can come in, the county can come in at any point and do an inspection. So that will also help keep any industrial site, as the name referred to very earlier. They're working at solve those starters on their own. So,
I think the thing that gets me, as well as a lot of other people, is that, you know, we were put on our heels over the announcement that, hey, you're getting a data center before we had any say in that. And that's what gets us, because the history of this area, as some people have talked about, is not good. And it doesn't make sense to me that if TeraWulf wants to be a company that builds a data center that is not like the usual data center, why do it secret? We should have had the opportunity to voice our opinions before the deal was made, not after the deal was made.
I understand your position. I hope you understand ours. We had lawyers telling us when we could say things publicly as part of our SEC requirements. And I think we all knew that this was going to be something that we we're going to have to deal with, was the sense that we should have known before this. We're here. We're trying to get the best information we have. We're trying to answer questions. We're starting a relationship. It's going to take time. And I don't expect you to believe me tonight. I just hope that over the years you'll come to appreciate that we back up what we say.
This is probably not going to be the best comment of the night that people want to hear, but I've actually been paying attention to the financials that speak about this project. And that got me looking into what it is that you want to do. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you're actually trying to be a new model for data centers. Would you agree with that?
Yes, going back to the question about the diesel backup. So, going back to the earlier question about diesel backup, we were the first ones to go out to market and say, hey, we don't need diesel backups. And people looked at us like we had three heads. Because, you know, traditionally, data centers require diesel backups. That's what they needed. But, you know, we approached it from a different perspective. You know, our background comes from power and generation. And we said, we don't actually need to do this. We think that you're overspending. You know, we just don't need it. So we took that to market. It took us a while to get traction. Ultimately, we were able to sign a number of deals with some of the largest data center customers in the world. So again, that's one key example of how we do it. We don't intend to do that. It doesn't make sense from a business perspective. That's one example.
And the residents of this community are of utmost importance. We will be residents of this community. TeraWulf living here, and we hope that residents will be part of the TeraWulf team. It's very important to us to look after the community when it comes to pollutants, when it comes to environmental decisions. That's why we work with best-in-class partners like PRM. We want to look at it through the lens of what's the best way we can do this, and we're going to be part of this community for a long time.
Yeah, that's why we're not speaking of the special treatment across the board. You know, we want to come in, we want to pay full freight. We want to make sure that people actually benefit.
Caitlin Harden.
I promise I don't want to sound repetitive, but you said you don't have a customer, for sure, but at one point you were talking, you were like, our customers want us to move fast. So do you have potential customers? Can you tell us who they are? Okay.
I can tell you,
Just say it.
no, we do have potential customers. I can tell you it's a pretty short list. We want it to be somebody who is going to be able to stay and pay. There's not that many companies that are data center customers that fit that description.
And you say it's not going to be Bitcoin or cryptocurrency.
Correct.
My question is, I am involved with Kentucky People's Union. We're out in our communities constantly knocking doors. And when we're out knocking doors, we never hear people say we need more data centers to make more, so we can scroll more. We don't need that. I hear people saying they're having trouble with electricity, and they're having trouble with food and medicine, and choosing between those three. And you guys like to come in here and show off your union jobs, talk about union jobs, but we know we have been a sacrifice zone for far too long when we made good promises. You also mentioned that you think that the trees and everything around will be like a subwoofer kind of or whatever to kind of like mute some of the sound from going out into it. Okay, please cite the peer-reviewed environmental studies from accredited universities that you have referenced to make sure that you will not impact on migratory species such as bats, butterflies, and birds.
Thank you very much for your comments.
So as part of the process, we'll go through and do delineations, habitat assessments, find anything suitable, coordinate with you as wildlife, take part as wildlife, and issues with information.
Right now, you can't cite it.
No, we haven't done any surveys yet.
Caitlin Harden. Okay. Is that Caitlin? Oh, so nobody got Ms. Harden out here? All right. Paula Bowling.
My first question is, are there any Kentucky Power or AEP representatives here tonight?
Yes, there are Kentucky Power, and when we conclude, you can meet them in the back right there for questions and answers, as well as anyone with the, wants to talk to the tri-state building trades, they're going to be around as well.
Okay, so this is what we were told at the meeting at the community center, that this would be a joint AEP and TeraWulf symposium, for lack of a better word. So,
well, I'm not exactly sure, but we wanted this to be a TeraWulf presentation.
And that's fine.
And they graciously agreed to join and are available afterwards for questions.
Okay, so I do have a question. People have concerns about sound. Are you considering a sound barrier in the facility, much like they do at the highways or whatever?
I mean, I think the answer is if it were required, we could do it.
Right, okay.
We've seen that there are certain facilities that are in high density areas, they're not very expensive. If it's something that's required,
Right, I think that maybe go a long way to alleviating people's concerns at a probably reasonable cost. That might help with that. My other question, you were talking about coal, and are you involved in any way with coal facilities here?
no.
Okay. Because, you know,
We
that
don't own any generation here.
Okay. All right. Well, now the rest of my questions would be for AEP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowling. Brandon Lavoie, I said that right? And then it's Marshall Smith.
Well, this has been interesting. My name is Brandon. I serve as an elected soil and water conservation supervisor in Garden County. But tonight, I'm speaking for just myself, not on behalf of the full board, board to come. First, I want to acknowledge something. You guys chose an old industrial site of untouched, instead of untouched land. You're holding a public meeting. You're showing up to answer questions. That matters. I am not here to attack industry. Power, water, infrastructure, jobs, and technology are part of building a future. I understand you're paying for your water, paying for your power, and investing in this region. And to add to this, $50 million to clean up the old aluminum site in Kentucky, thank you. And that is beautiful. I'm here to ask for partnership. I know what organized data can do because it helps save my life. For nearly 10 years, I was told I had multiple sclerosis. My medical information was scattered across doctors, tests, imaging, reports, and separate systems. Once I gained better access to my own records through systems like MyChart, I was able to gather my information and use modern AI tools to compare what had been separated for years. That helped reveal what was really happening. I did not have multiple sclerosis. I had a structural spine problem. I was born with it. And a dangerously narrow spine. A dangerously narrow spinal canal. That information helped lead me to neurosurgery before I became paralyzed. This is 3 months ago. Sorry, guys. Because of that, I can hold my children. I can feel my hands again. I can type, I can work, I can live. So I'm not standing here to say data centers are bad. I'm standing here because I know what happens when scattered information becomes accessible, organized, and usable. Our soil and water information is scattered too. It lives in conservation offices, old surveys, watershed reports, flood history, farm knowledge, erosion sites, abandoned land, local memory, and work people are already doing on the ground. Kentucky has people who know the land. Conservation districts are already doing the work. What we need is the ability to gather that information, store it, compare it, and diagnose problems earlier before the damage becomes permanent. So my question is this. Would TeraWulf consider a pilot partnership with Kentucky conservation districts that are interested to help compile soil, water, watershed, flood, erosion, cleanup, abandoned land data into usable systems so we can diagnose problems earlier and protect these resources for generations? And would you be willing to meet with local conservation leaders to explore that partnership and project?
Brandon, first of all, thank you for the question and the answers. We'd be happy to talk to you about this. I think you sent us a very nice email through the portal, which I read. So I'm going to give you my card. But also, I think when you look at some of the tax calculations, you're going to see that the conservation districts in the various counties are going to probably see a little lump with revenue, which might be an opportunity to connect the two. So I'm happy to follow up. I appreciate your story, and I'm glad you're with us. Marshall Smith. Vicki Dunn.
So first of all, I'm late to the party. I have no idea who had blessed for the death. My question is, because I'm not pleased at all, and I don't want to be I don't want my property value to go down. And I want to know why in the hell you would plant something before you did environmental studies.
Thank you for the question. So, like any project, you have to go through various survey studies. We're just not at that stage yet, so we're about to.
But why would you invest millions of dollars before you find out whether it was environmentally friendly?
So there's two things. One is we actually bought the project from a developer who did some initial studies, so we got an understanding in the diligence period of some of the environmental aspects of the property. It's actually one of the best we've seen in terms of we there isn't a lot of wetland that we are going to disrupt.
Found out about one tonight, didn't you?
And there is also plenty of space for us to move on to demo, demolition of an existing facility and remove hazardous materials. A lot of our environmental is, okay, if we're going to be like the smelter, we have to come up with a plan for removing the hazardous waste from the century aluminum plant and bringing it, to Canada and all that. So there was a lot that went into it. This was pretty straightforward, and the developer had done some initial studies. What we are building, we know very well. It's something we're building in other sites, and we know what the environmental impacts of that square footage are, and so we can apply that to the information that we have. So it's not that nothing was done in the diligence period. It's that now that there's several things we can't do until we own the property. We can't come in and drill and do geotechnical surveys and all that until we actually own it. So now that we own it, as of a few weeks ago, we're going to...
Are you at all concerned about a class action lawsuit causing you to stop and delay the projects?
No.
You should be.
Thank you.
Amanda Smith? Teresa Jackson?
First, I would like to apologize to everyone that is here. As a former school board member, I know that unless something has changed, there are at least 2 other gyms with acoustic adjustments that could have been used. I'm offended by our superintendent, our principal, and anyone on the commission that had to do with the setup of this facility. You know better. I have only heard about 20 words, clearly, if any other. I know you put up something about the power plant, and I couldn't see it, but I wasn't going to speak until about 2 hours before this meeting. So what I'm about to say will be disjointed, and you may feel like it's not pertinent to you, but it may be beneficial to you as well as to everyone in the room. I'm a little bit older, and sometimes history helps. But first, I want to ask, is it safe to say the size of one of your buildings will be at least the size of the gym? Okay. Now, what will they be built of? What is it, cinder block?
Steel.
Steel? Okay. When I was on the board, have you ever built anything on reclaimed land before?
Yes.
Okay, so you're aware of weight and concern of weight and petrified trees, and this school itself is built on hundreds of pylons, many feet deep, to handle the weight of the building. That was just something that popped in my mind while I was sitting here. But I have a PhD in nursing education, but I also learned about economic profiles and looking at your community and the community needs during obtaining my degrees. But I'm not here about that. I'm here about the 30-some years I was married to a Kentucky Power employee. We married in 1976, before many of you were born. And at that time, we worried about, when we got home from our honeymoon, he got the job. And At that time, power plants were good for 35 years. At that time. And we didn't know, since the one plant was built in 1963, the other plant built in 1969, we didn't know if he would have a job or if the plant would be around long enough for him to retire. He was blessed in that he was able to retire from Kentucky Power, but he passed. But what I'm wanting to say is he saw the plant Unit 1, the oldest one, be retired and converted to a gas plant. I think at the time the plant was 53 years old. After a plant is converted to a gas plant, they're good for an additional 10 to 20 years. So this plant is now 63 years old. When we were young, you had Cement Solvay, you had Ornco, all these different places that the plant was providing power to, and there were 2 units. There were sometimes outages. Some outages were planned, some were unexpected. There was also varying weather that put extra stress on the systems. It also required them to get additional energy from Rockport, Indiana. I don't think that happens anymore. When Unit 2 was torn down, the Mitchell plant in Morgantown, AEP, or not AEP, but Kentucky Power bought 50% of that plant. And that fills in the energy for Unit 2 that was torn down. You have that, plus you've got the gas-powered Unit 1. I know that they have purchased a peaker plant over on the Tulsa Highway. My dad was a dairy farmer and I played in that field many times as a young girl. But there's a peaker plant there now. That's been purchased, and another plant in Louisa. But I'm not certain what's going to happen if there's an outage or a power breaks down or something happens and we don't get the amount of energy that we need. I don't want to have to pay any higher gas bills. I don't want to have to pay any higher utility bills. I'm retired, I'm on a fixed income. The Mitchell plant was built in 1971. It takes the place of Unit 2. It was supposed to, in 21, AEP wanted to improve it, or Kentucky Power wanted to improve it, and they would not let it. It was all dealt with politics and coal-fired plants, and they wouldn't give Kentucky Power permission to improve upon it. This year and the end of last year, that changed. Our political system changed. So they're back into doing it. But you have to remember that plant was built in 1971. It seems to me like we have a lot of patchwork, just like our infrastructure with our highways and our bridges. There's a lot of patchwork that's been done, and this may put extra stress on our system. So there's some questions I would like for you all to ask AEP. Will the peaker plants that are in Tulsa Highway and Louisa and the Mitchell plant and the Unit 1 gas power plant be enough for energy? What's going to happen when an outage occurs or there's a breakdown? Do you have a Rockport to fall back on? The plants are old. Will the added energy requirements stress an old system and cause them to age out faster? Where will electric coverage come from? At what cost will that be to the regular customers? You know, West Virginia just approved, I think it was a 10% hike in their electric bills. And that, when Kentucky Power uses their energy, is that 10% brought over to us in addition to other charges. That's something that we need to know.
Ms. Jackson, do you have those in writing, the
I
questions?
can type it and send it to you. I just wrote this down out of my head while ago.
Well, I'll give you my card. We can talk to AEP, but I'm happy to take those questions and ask AEP to help us with some answers on them if we can't answer them ourselves.
Okay, I'd appreciate that. I also want a question about the generators. I couldn't hear, but did they say some of them were gas powered? Or are they diesel and?
Yeah, so with respect to the generators, so we, unlike a lot of data centers that used to be built, we don't plan to build like backup one-for-one diesel generators. So we're not going to have very many. We'll have a small amount, but far, far, far less than a traditional data center would have.
Well, here's the thought. We are going to have gas-powered energy for electricity, but I just had an experience this year where I lived in an all-electric neighborhood. Then the gas company came through, and then the generators, the gas-powered generators, shut down during this extreme cold that we had this past winter. I don't want something in Texas with the big turbines and things to happen around here. And I don't want us to have to eat the cost by having to pay the higher electric bills. We do have some wonderful union workers. My husband was one, and there were times when the electric Kentucky Power couldn't get any, they would bring electrical engineers from all over the country to try to fix the things. And he would wait and he would tell me, okay, I'm going to tell him. And he said, if you will buy a steak dinner for my team, I will fix your problem. And he did. We had many steak dinners, all of his crew had steak dinners because he solved the problems. So you do have some good, very bright men in this area.
Thank you.
But
I agree.
we also don't want hoodwinked, and we don't want to do what you want to do and then beg forgiveness. Please don't let things like that happen to us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to take one or two more questions. We're going to be around. It's almost 9 o'clock. We told us we got to get the school back in its property. But we will be here for follow-up questions if you want to talk to us. AEP will be back there, and the building trades around as well. Rachel Specht.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, so I have two questions. First of all, thank you all for being here, and thank you for coming to such a public meeting. I think you appreciate that. In one of the articles, I think it was from May of 2026 from TeraWulf, you mentioned the site at East Park that you had an initial 256 acres, but that you had additional acres for future expansion. Are you planning to expand? And if you are, how many acres?
Hi, thank you for that question. So the answer is we may. We have, there is other land available that we could purchase. We think the land that we have is adequate for the power agreements that we signed and then some. We could buy more acreage. We may. I'm not saying one way or another. We'll make that decision at the right time. but we have enough acreage today for what we're trying to do. There could be a reason why we buy it to look, years and years down the road.
One example is the wetland delineation survey we have to do, but if the property we're looking at, if that's not suitable, then maybe we could also.
You have another site to basically look at.
Yeah, it's just pretty close by.
Thank you. My next question is, so I'm sure you're probably aware of PFOAs or PFAAs, the forever chemicals. Does your company use any of those chemicals in its, to treat the water in its cooling process? And would you be willing to publish or make public the chemicals that you do use in operating your data center?
Yes, we publish that.
You will?
Yes,
Okay. But do you use those chemicals?
lots of my knowledge.
Somebody here, we have somebody here who can answer that question. I'm not familiar with that, with those chemicals. I don't believe that we do, but we can confirm that for you.
They're toxic and they're highly dangerous and they're used in cooling processes.
Okay, if you maybe grab our expert and we'll go through that.
I'm not an expert, but maybe she didn't mention they use food grade, which would not have any of those chemicals in it.
But that's probably just one chemical that you use, correct? You probably use others.
Kool-Aid, they use food grade. So
But do you use other chemicals in
that would
operating?
be a question that we have to
Okay.
mention. Yes.
All right, but you will make that public though, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And last question, again, we will be here. Ida Daly.
Thank you. Y'all hear me? So tonight I heard y'all speak a lot about your power plant and your data center in New York. I actually lived in Tompkins County for a while, so I'm very familiar with the area. But one detail you all didn't mention, even when you were explicitly asked about community complaints, is that environmental groups in New York currently have a lawsuit going on against TeraWulf over a zoning ordinance, feeling that you misclassified what we were using the land for, and folks have explicitly stated that there's noise pollution that you all have given us so much reassurances tonight we don't have to worry about, and you may have given those folks the same reassurances, and now, despite your efforts to stop that lawsuit and have it dismissed, a judge has said it can't continue, and that the folks suing have legal standing to sue. In combination with that, TeraWulf has publicly, according to several resources, operated at a loss the last several years. So that brings up a lot of concerns with what happens should things at TeraWulf go south. Should y'all declare bankruptcy? It also brings up some questions around trustworthiness. If this is not information you were willing to share with us, even when asked about complaints. So my question is going to go very directly to a simple yes or no of what happens if things go south. Do you have, was part of your deal, did it involve a decommissioning escrow?
Can I first address the lawsuit question?
Please.
The fact of the matter, and I appreciate the question, the fact of the matter is the lawsuit is against the zoning board of Lansing. It is not against TeraWulf.
Well, several articles include the zoning board as well as TeraWulf.
Well, we are a party to the proceeding because we have a case before the zoning board. But what happened was, we have the old coal plant in Tompkins County. We put in for a data center. We went before the planning board. We got a zoning board amendment to allow the use of the data center by the zoning board of appeals. Subsequent to that, two environmental groups sued the zoning board, the public body, saying that they had not followed proper procedure and had not done this legally. That is what is before the court. It is not a lawsuit against TeraWulf, it is against the zoning board of Lansing.
So you weren't involved in presenting to the zoning board how?
No, we presented, we put a case before the zoning board, and then they voted to accept that we should, that we were an allowed use in the industrial zone. Since before data centers were even on the map, they didn't have it explicitly listed in their zoning. So you need to go before the zoning board to get an exception or an amendment to say this is an allowed use, and they voted to approve it. And then subsequent to that, the environmental group sued the town.
And to be clear, there's no data center there today.
So you don't have a plant in that area?
That we're planning to, right? We're talking about Cayuga? Yeah, no, we do not have a data center there today. We plan to have a data center there. We're working through that. That's part of this. So there's no...
So TeraWulf and the environmental groups are both suing Lansing.
I'm happy to follow up with you and answer the questions more directly from a lawyer if that would be helpful.
Could you answer the decommissioning escrow if Lane's here?
Who's the decommissioning guy?
Yeah, can you explain?
So the decommissioning escrow, in case y'all like to go bankrupt, would have, you'd have to set up an account in advance and have the money that in case you go bankrupt, you'd still have to be responsible for paying for the building you set up and however you set up your zone to clean all that up, and that can't be passed on. Was that asked of you as part of when y'all came here?
Yeah, no, I would say the answer is no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Well, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Folks, thank you very much for giving us your time tonight. As I said, we'll be around to answer any questions afterwards, and if we can, we'd be happy to follow up with emails if we can't answer them here today. As I said, AEP will be in the back right corner. Building trades are around, and thank you all for spending a lot of time with us tonight. Thank you very much.
I know they just stopped everything, but I wanted to come up here and say something. My name is Nicholas Turtle. They don't have to pay attention to me because they haven't paid attention to anything else. I live 600 foot down the hill from that bottom building down there. That building and this place, I want to know what it is going to do to affect, whether it's improved or devastated, my quality of life for me, my children, my livestock, and my neighbors. Because this could potentially ruin my life. Because, and I don't want you all to come to me in 2 years and go, hey, what about your property? I bought my property because I want to die on the property. And I don't want to take it away from me, I don't want to hurt it. So what kind of guarantee or, I mean, anything, you can give me a line of bull crap for all I know.
Okay.